Welcome back to the Lemon Factor. I'm Chad, and today I'm going to go over with you final feedback on the lowering springs we installed on our project car, the 2019 Honda Accord 2.0 Touring. So 2 months ago, I installed the lowering springs, and if you're interested in finding out how to install lowering springs on your Honda Accord, take a look at the video. I'll leave a link in the description below. So we installed the springs. After a couple weeks, I did my initial impressions, and this video is 2 months later, in which I have put on several hundred miles on the car. I've let the springs settle. I've gotten acclimated to the springs, and I performed a 4-wheel alignment on the car. And I want to follow up with you to give you the final feedback regarding the ride height. How low did the car actually drop? How does the car feel? I will comment about getting the alignment. Do you need a camber kit or not? And finally, my impressions. Would I recommend the Eibach Pro-Kit springs or not? So if you're interested in finding out more, then stay tuned. Let's start off by going over the drop. So the Eibach Pro-Kit springs for the 10th gen Honda Accord, the 2.0, not the 1.5, but the 2.0 that we have here, a lowering height of 0.8 inches, so not even a full inch. And at first, I really thought that's not going to be enough. You know, I'd really like something more. As you can see here though, I think it looks really, really good. It takes away that gap. It really puts the top of the tire in line with the bottom of the fender well, and I think it looks great. So what was the actual drop? It was more than the 0.8 inches that Eibach indicates. So up front, on both sides, the car has dropped, and again, this is after several hundred miles, the car has already settled. It has dropped between 1 1/8 inch to 1 1/4 inches. And then in the back, the car dropped by 1 inch. So it did take a little time for the car to settle, especially in the back. But once it did, it has been at 1 inch drop pretty consistently now for a while. So I'm happy that it's lowered a little bit more than what Eibach indicates. You definitely feel that the car is more planted, lowered to the ground. I'd say for the lowering height, looks great. That gap is gone, and I'm really happy to see how this wheel almost tucks in under the fender well. So let's talk about the alignment. Anytime you change the suspension, whether it's the coilovers or with lowering springs, you definitely should get a 4-wheel alignment. And that's exactly what I did. I did wait for a couple hundred miles, wanted everything to settle, but I had the 4-wheel alignment done. And I know several of you have asked, do you need a camber kit? And the answer is, it depends. So when I went to have the 4-wheel alignment done, the alignment shop was able to get everything in spec to the Honda Accord OEM specs, except for the rear camber. That would indicate that yes, you do need to get a camber kit in order to adjust your camber in the back to bring it more in line with the Honda OEM specs. However, I'm not going to do that. And the reason for is it is so close to spec, it is within half a degree off of spec that, at least according to the alignment specialist, and I'm no alignment specialist, that I would not see any degradation of ride quality, and I would not see any abnormal tire wear, especially if I am regularly rotating the tires. So me personally, I am not going to put on a camber kit. However, if you're one of those that you want to make sure that you get everything is within spec, then yes, you would need to get it, because they were not, there's no adjustment in the back. They're not able to adjust it to bring it in to the Honda OEM spec. So this goes with any lowering springs. It's not specific to Eibach. If you're lowering your Honda Accord by anything more than roughly an inch, remember the final ride height for the rear ended up being 1 inch lower. So anything more than an inch, I would probably definitely recommend that you will be further out of spec, and you should probably get a camber kit to bring it back within spec. So now, most importantly, what about the ride quality? So if you've watched my preliminary feedback on the lowering springs, I did indicate that I thought there was some bounce to the suspension, and I wasn't sure that I was so happy with it. And I am really happy to report that that is definitely changed. I don't know if it just took some time for the car to settle. I don't know if with the adaptive suspension in the touring model, it needed to adapt to the new springs. You know what? Quite frankly, it could be a placebo effect, and I just, you know what, got acclimated myself to the new ride. But whatever it is, I will tell you that I am really happy with the ride quality the way it is. These Eibach springs are great. They lower the car from a looks perspective that I really love. From a ride perspective, it did not damage the Touring's adaptive suspension in any way that makes me regret putting the lowering springs on. And by damage, I don't mean physically damage it. I mean degrading the quality of the ride. So it is working extremely well with the adaptive suspension. I'm not finding that I am using the sport button all that much, but when I do, sport is noticeably different than the regular setting, and you get that next level of sport as you would expect in the handling with these Eibach Pro-Kit springs. Yes, the car is firm, the suspension is firm, but it is not jarring, it is not punishing. We do not have great roads around here, and this car really handles the imperfections in the road really, really well. So with that, what is my final verdict? Without a doubt, just get them. You'll be happy with them. You should be happy with them. I'm extremely happy with these lowering springs, and to the extent that I wish I put them on sooner. I was very nervous about messing up the Touring's adaptive suspension. I really enjoyed the difference between the regular and the sport, and I feel like this car off the showroom floor is very well sorted out from that perspective. Using the Eibach Pro-Kit springs, I don't feel like I've lost anything. Instead, these springs has definitely elevated the suspension to the next level. And I find that I'm thoroughly enjoying driving the car even more so now. But if you're wondering, and especially if you have the touring models adaptive suspension, if you're wondering how they would work out with them, so far so good. And I know there's some of you out there, or some people indicate that, you know, putting those springs on your car, they're gonna blow your stock shocks. You know what? I've put lowering springs on an otherwise stock car, not a lot, but on occasion. And I've only done it when the springs weren't too aggressive from a lowering height or from a spring rate height, like these Eibach Pro-Kit springs. I've never had any problems. Now, will they wear the shocks more, such that, and I'm making the numbers up here, such that my stock shock and spring combo may have lasted 60,000 miles and now the shocks will only last 50,000? Maybe, but that's okay. I'm perfectly happy with that. Do I think they're gonna blow my shocks within, you know, 5,000 or 10,000 miles? I don't. But of course, if something does happen, I will be sure to let you know. I hope you found this helpful. Hope you found this series helpful. And if you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. So thank you for joining, and until next time.